Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southern-appalachian-herbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southern-appalachian-herbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey, y'all. Welcome to this week's show. I promised to have a big announcement for you today, and so I'm just going to jump right into it. I have just finished and published and am releasing my new book. This is my fourth book. It is called Christian Herbal Medicine History and Practice. I had a fun time writing it. I did not hold back or try to be politically correct with this book. If you like my, shall we call, pugilistic personality, you might enjoy this book. If you are a Christian, you will enjoy this book. If you are not a Christian, but you're interested in history, you will enjoy this book. I have a lot of Jewish history in this book as well. I think if you're Jewish, you're going to very much enjoy this book. It has been a real eye opener for me. Okay, so the inspiration for writing this book is a question I get asked a lot, believe it or not. I was really surprised the first time someone asked me, is herbal medicine Christian? It just kind of took me back. I was like, well, why would you even ask that? Well, I was speaking with a very bright young lady, and she said that a lot of people she talks with in her church are very wary of herbal medicine. They so associate with New Age, witches, non-Christian religions, that kind of stuff. And I thought about it. And when I was growing up, there was a huge tradition of herbal medicine among the Appalachian people and also among the Native Americans that I grew up with. There was also a huge folk tradition from a lot of the immigrants that had moved in following World War II. I mean, we had a lot of people that came to the mountains of North Carolina because it's kind of reminded them of the Alps back home. We had a lot of Germans. We had a lot of Austrians. We had Polish, Czechoslovakian, a lot of Italians. And then in the 90s, a lot of Mexican and South American folks started coming in, and they all had brought with them their folk medicine, their home remedies. So it never occurred to me to see herbal medicine as anything other than just what traditional people used. And like I've said before, the people who taught me herbal medicine were very hardworking, conservative, traditional mountain people who were very Christian. When I thought back about it, growing up near Boone, North Carolina, there were four herb shops in town. There were four shops in town that sold herbs. I mean, that's kind of rare for most places. But when I think about the nature of those shops, let's see. First one was a big commercial health food store, mainly catered to vegetarians and vegans, and it had a vitamin and herb section. And I always joke that the most unhealthy people in the world were the ones that worked there. They were anemic, pale, hollow-eyed vegans. What do you expect? Um, so if you only knew herbalism from that perspective, you would think of it as sort of um, vitamins, commercial products, not you wouldn't even associate it with the folk traditions that were all around us. The next store I remember was it was what you would call a new age herb store. I mean, it was full of like, slender, willowy women with hairy armpits and tinkling jewelry and a lot of incense, and they had all the books on Eastern religions and mysticism and all that. And yeah, they had a nice herb shop, So yeah, if that was the only herb shop I ever walked into, I would definitely associate that with the type of people that shop catered to. So that's very understandable. The next one was what we called a head shop. It was mainly a place that sold Grateful Dead T-shirts and accessories for smoking pot. But they also had an herb section. So if that had been the only herb store I'd ever walked into, I'd have thought, well, it's just, a bunch of potheads. And then the last one is probably the funniest one. It was run by a retired college professor who had his hair and his beard both came past his belt line, and so did his stomach. He had this huge stomach that hung over, and it was an odd assortment of like things he liked. It was some herbs and a few teas and a bunch of futons and like stuff from garage sales, and it reeked of pot more than the head shop did. So, when I think about how people who haven't grown up in an herbal tradition might envision herbal medicine, yeah, I totally get it. But the truth is, all right, herbal medicine has been practiced by Christians since Christianity began. It was practiced by Jews and Greeks and Romans long before Christianity began. And as Christians grew as a community in Rome and the Roman Empire, they began practicing with those herbs, healing people for nearly 1,500 years. I mean, I'm talking literally from the fall of Rome to the 1500s. Nearly every hospital, essentially every hospital in Western Europe that was in the civilized world of the time was run by monks and nuns. It was, I don't have the date in front of me, somewhere in the 400s when the Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne decreed that the monks of the time and the nuns of the time, they were Benedictines, establish hospitals and herb gardens for the free treatment of the sick. Before then, Christians had actually been doing it in their own homes and churches. There were actually legions of Christian herbalists and strong men that would go out and find the sick and bring them in, carry them in, and treat them right there in people's homes or in their churches as the individual bishops really used herbal medicine as a way to grow the early church. We think of Rome as this, very sophisticated empire with a great military and philosophy and all that. Um, Rome was Rome for Romans. Medicine was for the wealthy and the soldiers. When plagues came through, there was not a lot of sympathy for anyone who wasn't a Roman citizen, certainly. I mean, this is when they were taking Christians and having them torn apart by lions for entertainment in the Colosseum. The early church actually grew another way because Romans had we'll call it a rather modern means of birth control. Not too much unlike Planned Parenthood today. They just took their children and threw them on the garbage heap, any unwanted children. Uh, Slave traders would come along and take those children and raise them and then sell them back to their own parents as slaves. Early Christians would go out and adopt all these babies. It was called exposing children. If you ever read the early Christian writings, the actual apostles of Christ were writing and having their words written down about what a horrible thing it was for babies to be abandoned and how Christians had a duty to take them in. So the early church was actually built on Christian run hospitals, charitable services, orphanages, and the only medicine was herbs. I mean, think about it. The only medicine was herbs. It would be well into the 1500s when Paracelsus started dealing with various metals and chemicals. He was the father of toxicology, as well as being a great Christian herbalist himself, by the way. I tell that whole story in the book. For him, all medicine was plant-based. And I have books like King's Medical Dispensatory. I think it's 1898. I've got various pharmaceutical manuals going into the 1920s. Like 90% of the medicine on the shelves was plant-based. Everything was plant-based. There was no other medicine but herbal medicine. And so people ask, is herbal medicine Christian? Well, the simple answer is yes. Anyone of any religion, I mean, let's just think about this plainly. Anyone of any religion or no religion at all can use herbs medicinally. If you believe in a loving God who created the earth and everything on it, including humans, there's certainly no reason why anyone of any religion should be prohibited from using herbs and or find using those herbs to be somehow evil or unchristian. I mean, in truth, not only is herbal medicine compatible with Christianity, but it's incompatible with Christianity not to use herbs and to try to help and heal people. In recent years, herbal medicine's really become associated with the New Age religions, witchcraft. I mean, probably what a third of the books on the market in any herbal store are going to be about Wiccan herbs and herbs for witchcraft and all this stuff. And a lot of people just throw out this blanket statement. They'll say the church forbade the use of herbs. The church said you couldn't use herbs for healing. That was all superstition and witchcraft. Well, that's not true. Okay, no church edict by any mainstream denomination has ever forbid the use of herbs blanketly. How could they? If until the 1920s and even beyond, until the main pharmaceutical industry really got going, herbs were our only medicine, then it would be absolutely impossible for any Christian to be a doctor. And we know that well through even after the Protestant Reformation, well through the 1700s, 1800s, the colleges, universities were always associated with the church, whether it was the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, you name it. The professors were usually monks and priests. I mean, religious education was the only education, and Christian doctors were all right, I don't think all doctors were Christian. Obviously, we've always had agnostics and atheists and all that. But if you were to poll doctors, say I'll throw out a date, just say 1800, and you were to put out a poll of all the doctors in Central Europe, Western Europe, well, I mean, you'd even be the colonies or the United States at that time. We're talking 1800s, right? 99% of them would have identified as Christians. They really wouldn't have been accepted in their communities had they not been. And so when people say, well, the church forbade the use of herbs, well, that's just idiotic. Honestly, it's idiotic. But one of my actual favorite herbal authors made that statement boldly in two of his better books. Someone who obviously knows better thought it was either a joke or just a really great thing to say that in the beginning we had pagan herbs, and then I think he said the 1100s, the church forbade the use of pagan herbs and said you should only use prayer. Well, actually, in the 1100s was the time of St. Hildegard von Bingen, probably the greatest herbalist that ever lived. She was so respected that the popes and bishops had her traveling around the entire region, speaking in every church, and royalty and wealthy were coming from all over Europe to speak with her and learn from her. Not only is she an herbalist, proving that there was never an edict saying that you couldn't use herbs, she's a canonized saint. She's actually a doctor of the church. She's one of the only female doctors of the church, meaning her wisdom, her writing is so recognized as being enlightened that it informs all of Catholicism at this point, but we're talking 1100, it informs all of Christianity, and we're all encouraged to read it. So, I mean, I'll tell you when someone says that the church forbade the use of herbs, that's pagan stuff. No, mildly, that's just not true. This myth is repeated so often. You will hear it if you take I'll say many, if you take many herb classes by recognized teachers, you're going to get some indication of herbalism as a Christian, and Christians aren't allowed to practice it for some reason. All right, idiotic. The reason people cannot point to any church edict blanketly prohibiting the use of herbs by any denomination now, I'm talking any denomination, is because it simply never happened. You know, there have been times in history when the church would forbid practice of the occult, um, necromancy, speaking with the dead. You know, the church has issued very clear statements, and again, I'm talking actual edicts by the Catholic Church or prohibitions against, witchcraft by the Puritans in New England. Any Christian church at different times has warned against certain things, never against herbal medicine. Myth is repeated so often that people believe it. Really, the origins are very deliberate. It's been propagated by people who honestly hate Christianity. This mythology is what is most often taught in herbal schools and even in college classes. It's really a very recent phenomenon that's poisoned many minds, creating bigotry against Christianity and what they usually refer to as the patriarchy. People who believe it unknowingly, I understand. People who came up with these lies did so deliberately because they reject history. They embrace the occult and the neo-pagan movements that began in Victorian England and flowered in America about the time the traditional herbal medicine was being displaced by modern medicine, what we call allopathic medicine, and through rule of law. It wasn't a church edict that made practicing herbal medicine essentially illegal in the United States. It was the Pure Foods and Drug Act. It was laws enacted by people who at the time called themselves progressives or socialists or liberals, who not only did not like the Christian religion, but wanted to outlaw what they called superstition. Everybody was supposed to worship the new God of science. So far from being any Christian church that outlawed the use of herbs, it was the very liberal, leftist, progressive socialists of that era. Traditional Christian men and women have always continued to practice herbal medicine. I mean, it could be the remote regions of the Appalachians, it could be midwives among the Mennonites. You know, several Native American tribes have continued to keep strong their traditions of herbal medicine. Immigrant groups, anywhere people were not part of the mainstream university and professional cultures of the cities, we continued with our traditions. And this is what's, really kind of ironic is these very people that oppose Christianity were ones, as I said, outlawing herbal medicine. And even especially, well, I shouldn't say even, I should say especially in Germany, where progressives were particularly powerful during the rise of the National Socialist Workers' Party. You know what that is, right? National Socialist Workers' Party, that's the Nazis. They completely tried to outlaw herbal medicine. And it was a Catholic priest that I've written about before, Father Kunzel, who sued and won in a court of law, proving that the herbs that were used in German folk medicine that came down from the monastic medicine were more effective in treating diabetes than the doctors and scientists and chemists of the day. So not only was the practice of herbal medicine incredibly Christian, but the legalization and saving the tradition of herbal medicine was done by a Catholic priest, at least in Germany. In America, we had men like Thompson. I believe he was Unitarian. We had Jethro Kloss, a Seventh-day Adventist. Many Christian herbalists that really fought hard to keep these traditions alive. Very not the picture that is presented in most herb schools and college classes today, or in bookstores and books. This is what really makes this book unique. And I feel really passionately about this, you can probably tell. I mean, herbal medicine is certainly Christian. It's using the herbs God gave us with the knowledge and wisdom He created and encouraging us to heal people. a concept in propaganda. It's called the big lie. It's a lie that's told so boldly and with such confidence that no one could doubt the person saying it. No one could believe that liar would be so bold as to tell it if he knew it wasn't true. And it's told so often that even the people being lied about begin to believe. Definitely, a Christian should be skeptical and wary of anything that's associated with New Age spirituality or witchcraft. Okay, but the truth is that the vast majority of herbal books have been written by Christians, Orthodox and devout Christians, and the history of herbal medicine should be proudly Christian. The great herbalist of England, Culpeper, Parkinson, Gerard, all devout Christians. You may wonder about Culpeper. Yeah, he was into astrology, but he was actually a devout Anglican who hated Catholics, by the way. Parkinson was Catholic, and Gerard, I believe, was Anglican. Throughout Germany, we've got, from St. Hildegard, Abbot Walfrid Strawbug, who wrote the first herbal after the fall of Rome. Father Kunzel, Father Nape, Brother Aloysius. This is, that's German folk medicine that came down from monastic medicine. They were writing in the 1800s. Maria Treben, who reintroduced this whole tradition to us in the late 70s and 80s, devout Christian lady. The very first medical school founded, Medical School of Salerno, was a religious Christian medical school. We can take it on down through the ages. Do you ever wonder why in England they still call nurses sister? It's because for hundreds of years, the Benedictines ran the hospitals. The nurses were nuns. The history of herbal medicine in Western tradition is almost exclusively Christian. That's a bold claim, I know. But let's think about this. Who was the first patron saint of herbal medicine? St. Fiacre. St. Fiacre was born in Christian Ireland, it having just been Catholicized by St. Patrick about a generation ahead of time. Yes, the Druids had an incredible, absolutely incredible history of herbal medicine. Those herbs were adopted right into Christian herbal medicine. And when the books were written, they were written by Christian people. I make the point in the book that, the Spanish and the Portuguese were colonizing often very violently colonizing South America. One of the main things they were looking for were medicinal herbs. They wanted the knowledge of herbal medicine that the natives had. So, history is a mixed bag. There have been violent people in every culture. Every people on earth has practiced slavery. They don't teach that today. They don't teach that when Columbus landed, the Native Americans, or Native South Americans, however you want to put it, the natives that were very friendly to him were friendly to him for the very reason that they had a rival tribe right next door. They hoped to get him on their side to go annihilate that rival tribe and then sell those other natives back to the Europeans as slaves. Okay? Every people on earth has acted badly at some time. The greatest force for good, the greatest force for civilization, the greatest force for humanity, caring for your fellow man, equality, medicine, and education has been Christianity. It's our legacy. Yeah, it's been lied about over the past 30, 40 years to the point that we don't know it and understand it anymore. We've come to believe the lie. This is our history. It's our birthright. It's our birthright as Christians to learn about and practice herbal medicine. I believe it's our duty. It says in the Bible, God put us here to be stewards. He made us gardeners in his world. He made this knowledge available to all men and women. He made it available to us for the very purpose of helping people and doing good. I believe this book would be important both as a book about herbal medicine. I write a lot about herbs and their use in this book. It's not all just history, okay? But it is also important that people understand Christian history. By believing the big lie, we're actually allowing people who hate us to take our history and legacy from us. As Christians, it's our duty to oppose lies because Satan's the father of lies. We should not only study and practice herbal medicine, but we should do so with boldness, taking back what is both right and rightfully ours. I really think this is going to be an important book because it's about herbs and their use. I mean, it's about the practice of herbal medicine over a 2,000-year period. But it's also important to understand Christian history and its influence on culture and education and medicine. And it's really my hope and prayer. It's my hope and prayer that each person who reads the book will use it as a starting place. I hope people will begin to learn more about herbal medicine, that they'll look up the original sources that I quote in the book, Saint Hildegard, Father Nape, Maria Trevin, even old Yule Gibbons, who was a reformed communist who kind of became a marginal Quaker. He's an important figure in herbal medicine in the United States. His Stalking the Healthful Herbs gave that information to a whole new generation. I hope people will begin to practice herbal medicine in their home for themselves and their family. My vision is really one of millions of people using the herbs God gave us and sharing this knowledge with others. I'd love to see this book inspire people, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people to learn about herbs and become herbalists. And hopefully we'll have a whole generation, a whole new generation of Christian herbalists who write books because the victors write the history. We have seceded, we have ceded ground. We have let the progressives, the neo-pagans, not all bad people. I'm not casting aspersions here. I'm just telling you the truth. We have let them take over education, and they're now writing the history. They don't write that the progressive movement of the early 1900s was all about eugenics, trying to exterminate black people and Jews and Italians and all Catholics and brown people and yellow people. They only wanted their people. And that's what started both the gas chambers in Nazi Germany and Planned Parenthood in the United States. They don't tell you that Margaret Sanger, who was, the founder of the abortion movement in the United States, who Hillary Clinton's hero, openly advocated for forced abortion and sterilization to terminate, to end, to erase African and African American people from the face of the earth. No, they teach that progressives are good people that want this equality, and the problem here is the patriarchy. The problem is the Christians. That's not actually the way history happened, but the victors write the history. So I'm hoping you can take this and you can learn from it, and it's going to inspire you, and you're going to write the next book. And I'm looking forward to reading it. The Bible says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." It also says, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." Let's embrace the truth of what really happened. Learn it, live it, enjoy it. Get rid of some of this division. We're supposed to be the peacemakers, and the peacemakers can't be the peacemakers when we're allowing the people causing the division to write the message and educate the youth. This is a very ecumenical book. I don't want anybody to be put off if you're a Protestant because you see a bunch of monks and nuns and priests in there. Again, history for the first 1,500 years, all the Christian writers and everything were Catholic or Orthodox. After then, I talk about many of the great Protestant herbalists. This is a book on Christian history, and it's a book where people should learn from each other and respect each other. And I make some pretty controversial points in the book, but I do so out of a spirit of love. This lie that is being propagated, perpetuated, is tearing us apart. We need unity, and that unity is found in the family of God. I really believe firmly that we have a duty to understand the good and the bad about history. And remember, what was it that won over the pagan Rome? It wasn't anybody forcing them to convert to Christianity. They were recorded saying, "See how they love each other. See how they care for each other." So don't even think that I'm saying all herbalists have to be Christians or all have to be herbalists. I'm just saying the truth is actually much nicer than it's often portrayed. I guess it's unfashionable these days to talk about good things and give good news, but there's actually a lot of heroes over the past 2,000 years. people we can look at and learn from. And a lot of them are herbalists, and most of them are Christian. So I hope you're going to enjoy this book. I know it's going to ruffle some feathers, but it's important, I think. It's called Christian Herbal Medicine History and Practice by Judson Carroll. As of today, it's available in paperback through Amazon. You can get the Kindle version through Amazon. Um, you can get the ebook, a PDF, directly from me. Just go to my blog, sonappalachianherbs.blogspot.com. It's PayPal, it's $9.99, and I email you the book. I mean, within just a couple of hours. Some people say, why didn't I get a link? Well, you didn't get a link because I'm sort of a Luddite. I actually just email you the whole book. Okay. That also opens up a line of conversation. You have my email address and you can ask me questions and talk with me. I think it's kind of a good thing, actually. But the paperback book, available on Amazon. I know a lot of people prefer that, and I certainly understand it because, like I said, I'm a bit of a Luddite. So, Christian Herbal Medicine History and Practice by Judson Carroll. Now, I also promised we would get into some herbs for animal bites. We talked about herbs for insects last week. This is now herbs for, oh, just say dog bites and cat bites and such as that, and wild animal bites too. But generally speaking, we really should view animal bites as puncture wounds that are particularly prone to infection. I did another show on antiseptic herbs. Any of those could be used, okay? But I think a really good protocol is to clean the wound with soap and water, disinfect the wound with alcohol or peroxide or iodine, whatever you got. Soak the wound in a strong Oregon grape or other berberine containing herb decoction. That's Oregon grape, that's barberry, that's golden seal, which you shouldn't use if you have access to other things, or gold thread coptis. Okay, that is a real strong antiseptic. I mean, soak the wound in that decoction. Then apply a poultice of either garlic or onions and plantain. Don't use comfrey too soon because it can close the wound and seal infection inside. Try to have those on hand. Try to have garlic and onions. Try to have some plantain. And, this is plantain leaves. I'm not talking the thing that looks like a banana. I'm talking the weed that grows in your yard. And try to have some berberine containing herbs. So, Oregon grape and barberry are my go-to. You'll find them just about everywhere in landscaping. Often the main concern with such wounds is panic. It actually isn't even the wound itself. After that, I would say secondary infection. Actually, allowing the wound to bleed some can help wash out the any bacteria that's gotten in there. The human body's dealt with such wounds since we left the Garden of Eden. I mean, literally, animals have been biting us ever since. Our immune system knows what to do. We just need to use common sense and stay calm. Panic can cause high blood pressure, can cause a heart attack, can cause stroke and shock, and that can be brought on by any traumatic injury, but really the primitive fear or the fight or flight response of an animal attack probably triggers that better, more strongly than anything else. Definitely some animals can carry disease, but remember, first rule, stay calm. Because in most cases, disease is not our primary concern. Primary concern is that their mouths are full of bacteria. Just stay calm, follow the cleansing and antiseptic steps. Those will also help counter viral infections. You know, really often on social media, especially when I used to be on Facebook and such, I'm only on a few sites now. A lot of times, it was often young mothers who put out a message saying, yeah, help, I'm panicking. My child was scratched by a stray dog or cat. People would offer suggestions, but I would always say, remain calm. Most animals are healthy. Okay, I'm a hunter and a trapper. I can attest that very few animals, usually especially predators, are diseased. The sad reality is nature's cruel. Sick animals rarely last long. Even such terrifying diseases such as rabies are not really all that common or easy to transmit. First of all, rabies is transmitted through saliva. So bites are a concern. You know, if you're scratched, you're probably not going to have to worry about rabies. You may have to worry about cat scratch fever, which isn't just a Ted Nugent song, a really lousy Ted Nugent song, in my opinion. He did better work, even though I think it was probably his most popular. Staph infection is a huge concern. I mean, that's it's a much bigger concern, really, to me, than rabies from a scratch. Now, if it's a bite, it's a different case. But in any case, just thoroughly cleaning, disinfecting the wound from the scratch is usually sufficient. An animal with rabies can usually only transmit when showing symptoms. I mean, it's just like humans. We transmit the virus when we're fevered and coughing and sneezing. So if the animal's not showing symptoms, really, really low odds of transmitting uh, rabies through even a bite, even if they are carrying it. It may be still in incubation stage, not in the stage where it can spread usually. So let's just keep everything with a caveat. We want to be careful, careful about any wound. But an animal infected with rabies will show symptoms like lethargy, stumbling, or oddly aggressive behavior. Sometimes they just like walk right at you. It can be foaming at the mouth. Look up the full list of symptoms for rabies and any other animal diseases that are common in your area. Some years we get weird viruses. Make sure you know what's going on with your area. There will be government advisories out. So if you or somebody in your family gets cut or scratched, you should be able to pull that information up very quick just on the internet. If you don't have access to the internet, call your local animal control department and ask them, are there any cases of rabies that are presented in our area? If they say no, or they say there's something else, then at least you know what you might be dealing with, right? Um, Usually, even when I tell people this, they're still freaking out and they call animal control. Control comes and takes a stray dog or cat or raccoon or whatever it happens to be and kills it. And then they have to wait like over a week for the test to come back to tell them if the animal had rabies in the first place. So, well, while I am all for killing animals in a humane way for food, and I don't have any problem with fur and certainly leather, I really think it's a shame to go around killing animals just because somebody's freaking out for pretty irrational reasons. Okay, when I was a kid, we lived in the country, and I adopted every stray dog and cat I could find, and every injured animal. I mean, that was nothing new in my family. I mean, my uncle even adopted a three-legged alligator. So, and he had adopted some raccoon kits that had been abandoned. I mean, it's what country people do. And I was scratched and bitten probably more times than I can remember or even try to count. Uh, we even took in a stray Angora kitten once, prettiest little cat you've ever seen, but she was completely psychotic. I mean, she just sliced me to ribbons just on a regular basis. Uh, One of my dogs was once playful and kind of swatted at me with her paw, and that her claw caught the back of my calf and ripped my leg open about 20 inches long, and it was deep. And I mean, if I had gone to a doctor, it would have been stitched up, and the dog probably would have been put down. That's what the officials like to do for a dog that has a bad scratch or a bite. It was my dog. She was a big, dumb dog. So, of course, I didn't want that to happen. And, you know, when stuff like that did happen, what my mother or my grandparents did was to wash and disinfect the wound. They put some peroxide on there, they bandaged it up. And honestly, if I was out in the field or the woods, I'd probably be told just to rub some dirt in it, especially if I was with my great grandparents. All right, I know that sounds crazy, but if you were a kid and you played baseball or another sport before, say, 1999, before the world went crazy and everybody got so sensitive, you probably heard rub some dirt in it a whole lot. That's what the coaches used to tell you to do. And it would usually stop the bleeding, and you just went on playing. And while that's probably terrible advice, and I'm not going to tell anybody to rub dirt in a wound, maybe that's why I have a stronger immune system today, right? But it's kind of funny and hard to remember at the same time because it brings to mind one of the last lessons my grandfather ever taught me. I mentioned before my grandfather died of ALS when I was 10, and it just changed everything. Essentially, the entire family fell apart. But even when he was paralyzed and unable to speak or breathe on his own, I mean, he was a strong pillar that held the family together. And he had a strong faith and a strong personality, and you can understand. But ALS is a horrible disease. It's a slow, debilitating. It's just awful. But when I was 8 or so, he was still walking around. He wasn't doing real well. And there were some feral kittens that I found in the barn and began to adopt. One of them was a real, tomcat. He liked to play hard, and I was kind of wrestling around with him, and I had a sock I was using as a hand puppet. I'd make it look like a little mouth, kind of biting at him, and he'd strike it where the eyes should be. He was a mess. I took the sock and I put it over his head. I just figured he'd pull it right off. Well, instead, he ran off the porch, ran through the field and into the woods, down to where the pond was. And I told my mother what had happened because I didn't know what to do. Well, my grandfather heard it. He could not speak at all, and he was just about to lose his ability to walk and the ability to breathe. I mean, every step was a painful struggle. But he motioned for us to follow. He crossed the field. He went to the woods. He searched for that kitten. He finally told us to go on home, and he slowly struggled to follow. I can't imagine how exhausted he was. The kitten, of course, was on the porch, waiting to be fed with the others. My grandfather knew it would be. He knew full well that cat would figure out how to get that sock off his head. But all that effort was to teach me the last lesson a strong and noble man could teach his grandson. What he was doing was teaching me to take responsibility for my actions. His every painful step and labored breath was for my benefit. His suffering would continue to be a noble and profound example of perseverance, strength, faith, and unfailing love for his family to the very end. I tell you, it was a hard lesson, but it was intended to be. So, what do you do if you have serious reasons to believe that the animal that bit you had rabies or some other serious disease? Obviously, with such serious threats to health, it's possible to seek professional medical care. If the situation is such that it's not an option, there are some really good herbs and home remedies that have been used for rabies and other diseases for centuries. I can't vouch for the efficacy of any of these because I've never had rabies. I don't know anybody who has. But traditionally, and for hundreds of years, herbalists have written down these remedies. Um, Using garlic internally and externally is an antiseptic. Elderberry taken internally has antiviral properties. Echinacea taken internally has antiviral, antibiotic, and immune supportive properties. High doses of vitamin C have been used for immune support and as an antiviral. A really interesting herb called cat's claw or uña de gato. It's a South American herb that is used internally as an antiviral. It's relatively new to Western herbalism, but it shows incredible promise as a very effective antiviral. Lavender, used externally, is antiseptic and makes a good poultice together with plantain. St. John's wort oil has been used for such wounds. St. John's wort to be taken internally also has antiviral properties. American arbor vitae, that's Thuja, is an effective antiviral and antiseptic used both internally and externally. Clintonia is an herb that was used by Native Americans as a poultice for bites from rabid dogs. Now, skullcap is very interesting because it's traditionally been called mad dog skullcap because the tea was used as a folk remedy for rabies. It has strong antiviral properties. The antiviral properties of Chinese skullcap have been most researched. Probably all skullcaps are fairly interchangeable in that way. It is sedative and antispasmodic. That would help ease the symptoms of the disease as well. There's cocklebur. Yes, the annoying cocklebur. Cocklebur has traditionally been used for the treatment of many viruses, including rabies. Rattlesnake root. That is, let's see if I can pronounce this. Prananthes alba. Many herbs are called rattlesnake herb or rattlesnake root because they were used for snake bites. We'll get into that next time. But rattlesnake root, this one, the root was boiled in milk and used internally for both dog bites and snake bites. Colloidal silver is not an herb, of course, but it's believed to be strongly antiviral. Colloidal silver is a good thing to have around. Honey is I hate putting honey on topically, but it is antiseptic and very useful for treating wounds. Swedish bitters. Yep, good old Swedish bitters. I'm always recommending, I'm always talking about. One of its purported uses, one of the things that it's traditionally been used for is against the biting of mad dogs, used internally and externally. And then drawing poultices. Drawing poultices are very good. That can be the pad of a prickly pear cactus and an optunia. You want to skin it, get all the spines off, put it on there. It helps draw out. Plantains can be somewhat of a drawing poultice. Charcoal is an excellent one. Activated charcoal. Clay. especially what they call French clay, just a good pure clay, good drawing poultice. That gives you some options, but remember the main thing is don't freak out, don't panic, clean the wound, call wildlife control or check the internet, find out if there are any bad animal diseases going around in your area, and then take appropriate action in a calm and methodical fashion. Y'all have a great week. I hope you will buy my book. I think it could really be like one of those stones dropped in a pond where the ripples just keep going out and out and out until it becomes waves at the edges. Okay, a big stone. But I think this little book could be a big stone in not just herbalism, but in Christianity, in Christian culture, and understanding of who we are and where we came from and where to go from here. So have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.